I was wondering, you know, if this is like the morning after, you know.
Oh, like a you know, after a party sort of morning.
Yeah. People like those long weekends.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was difficult to wake up this morning for sure. My sleep schedule has shifted. Like instead of waking up at 6, I was waking up at 7, you know, 7:30
Yeah.
later in the morning.
Yeah, well, I'm running the tape, so
Okay.
the recording. So if you want to start,
Right.
oh, there's some folks.
Yeah, let's go ahead and start. I am going to just share with everybody the agenda Chris sent last week, just you know, just to orient ourselves real quick. Okay, so we have a few items today. We'll do a quick recap of the previous meeting, and I can you know I can do that real quick. It's not a long item. We are going to do a quick overview of the WISE project timeline. I probably between Scott and Cello, they may have a better idea of what the deliverable due dates are. If I understand it correctly, it's September, but we'll talk about that. The next item, kind of the main item for today, is the working session around expanding the lifecycle costing process to you know, in BPMN format to basically, you know, summarize the discussions we've been having on that issue over the last, I don't know now, maybe like 5 or so plus meetings. And then just, you know, just we'll come up with some next steps at the end. So just to recap the last meeting. So we did have, we did review the asset management plan development workflow that was developed a few, like I guess 2 phases ago. I'm not going to zoom in, so you know I know you all have some copies of this at the end, but we focused on we did a review of this and we focused on which sections of this could incorporate the life cycle cost steps in. Dr. Mike was here as well, and he had some ideas around maybe consolidating a few of these processes and then maybe showing things a little bit different in terms of where the data goes and where the data is coming from and so forth. So that's fine, and we can of course do that at any time. But that's what we did for the most part last week, which was kind of nice. It kind of helped me a little to put together something to discuss off of when it comes to the lifecycle costing workflow. So we can, you know, take a look at that a little later and then figure out, you know, where each step may belong best. And we don't have to do that decision, obviously, today. As long as we get the workflow thing figured out, we can jump on the, you know, next step could potentially be to incorporate those new, you know, sub-process steps, if you will, with this larger workflow. So in a nutshell, that's kind of like what we covered in the last meeting. Let's go back to the agenda. Between, I guess, Scott and Cello, are you able to comment on kind of like a general timeline for when we want to get like a status report out or maybe some sort of deliverables figured out?
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead, Cello. Go ahead.
It's okay, Scott. Did you want?
No, I think it's really good that we, and Cello can talk some about the details here, but that we have in this fiscal year, we have basically 2 months left. And, you know, before the workshop we have also, and it's good for us to discuss what our expectations are in terms of what deliverables we're going to produce, a case study that we can produce, just how we're going to wrap up this fiscal year with the you know, particularly with the life cycle, you know, approach that's been supplementing the asset management plan process. So that's really all I had to say, but maybe we could kind of, and you're in a good position here, Mert, to say what you think we're going to be able to accomplish as well.
Okay, so sounds like we have a little bit of flexibility to define what we think is reasonable as far as like an end goal is concerned. Okay, yeah, I do have some ideas actually, unless, you know, before I go though, Cello, did you want to add anything else to what Scott said?
Yeah, I can just maybe provide a little bit of a context and share. I'll share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
And just a second. I'm kind of a visual person, so if I don't see a diagram, I can't make sense out of words. So this is
It's a
the
big, complicated one. All right.
sorry?
No, it's just that a lot of boxes. I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, a lot
this.
of boxes. This is like a lot of boxes. This is like a warehouse, the WISE warehouse, I guess. So these are an important part of WISE is a methodology for assessment and improvement of different things such as processes, people, and technology. So this is sort of like the overall map for the methodology. And this is the front page, the first worksheet in a tool that assessment tool that's within this red box, which is it big enough so you can read or no?
I can see it personally.
Others, is this big enough?
I think it's okay. I can see it.
You can see it, okay. So this is the overall methodology. So what we've done, define the steps such as preliminary planning and initial improvement process definition when people are just starting, then initiating the process itself, and then depending on the scope, we could go down if it includes all the aspects, or go to the sideways if it includes only workforce and organizational culture. We have different assessments and different activities. So in the years of UAIM, we have focused on, we have been focusing on this right here, mostly on sort of documenting and modeling the business process, analyzing it, designed it to be, defining the change, and looking at project management plans. So we have 18 case studies that cover this range, and once the process is documented and so forth. So what we were hoping for is to have pilot projects this year where the case studies could describe this area of how to assess the technology, how to start the modeling process, assess the characteristics of the business process, and then also how to we've developed a tool for assessing the people aspect, the workforce, and we've also that's the other spreadsheet. We've also, let me just make that bigger. We've also defined an assessment tool here for change management. So we've been addressing different parts of this improvement. So each utility is in a different place. So some of them are, working actively. They're working actively in different areas. So the scope of what they can accomplish this year will be different. And when I say this year, I mean until September 1. So whatever studies and results we can get from these activities will be the deliverable. We don't necessarily look at this as sort of having to prepare a report that people will read, but to assemble a set of artifacts and documents that describe how different utilities have addressed different pieces. So I will stop now and see if maybe Scott can add something, and if other people have questions or comments.
Yeah, Cello, I would just say, so there's two kind of things that we're doing. One is a utility by utility use of the maturity models and the assessments tools and applying those in their utility. That's one thing which you just described. The other thing is that we have this team that's been meeting for a year and been focused on life cycle cost analysis, and and developing a tool for that. So however far we get as a team, on that, we can basically have a case study related to that and document what's been done, and that would be of use for other utilities and going into the future too for the life cycle aspect of the asset management plan.
Yes, Mert, to answer your question, it has been a year. We started on September 1. Well, not quite a year, but
pretty close.
But pretty close.
Yeah.
So anyway, any questions on this or thoughts? So within this context, we're working individually with each utility and trying to assist them to map their needs against this kind of improvement framework.
Yeah, and meanwhile, this team has been meeting, and Mert may ultimately have some ideas about what we're going to be able to bring to closure for this team on the subject of life cycle cost, analysis and modeling.
So I have some, based on what I heard, I have some ideas for discussion with everybody here. So please make it, like interactive in that way. Just let me know if I'm, making sense here. So I feel like we've created certain artifacts here, right? So one of them is that our approach. So we've selected the life cycle cost, sort of like continued from like the previous phase and the phase before, and we've sort of carried that forward. So we have that discussion, and it kind of led us to life cycle cost. So we've developed an approach, we've developed a tool that helped guide us figure out how to implement it. And then I'm going to show it in a little while, but we've also developed like, if you would like, an expanded sub-process of like how that could integrate with the overall asset management plan development. So I think these are all part of the deliverable of this team. It doesn't necessarily belong to any one utility. As a group here, we can put that forward. I think in July we will be tweaking that, frankly, and we will be making some edits to it. And I do have some questions/feedback requests on different parts of that, which I will cover, which is going to take us at least probably another meeting, probably one more to sort of get a handle on. But my ideal goal then is come end of July, we have this figured out. And then, in August, we basically put things together. Now, one component of this is that once we get this figured out and we agree on some sort of like an ideal life cycle cost assessment to be, we could probably come up with some, a list of sort of change, I don't know, like little change tasks or projects or, things of that nature. Then we could take a step back, and then, if there is that extra week available in our schedule, we could push those through the change maturity assessment tool in like one work session. And that could be another output as to, we probably won't be able to come up with scope to fix those gaps, but at least we could maybe push that through the process too. So, ideal to be of life cycle cost. These are the gaps we've noticed in our respective utilities. We basically do a quick readiness assessment, like change maturity assessment, and then, figure out, okay, just list, okay, these are the things that, utilities may encounter, like things that are sort of preventing the implementation of the life cycle cost impact. That's our life cycle cost assessment. That they could be individual projects to close the gaps at respective utilities. I don't know, something like that may work, I think.
Yeah, just wanted to add very quickly that Scott's actively working on the agenda. We're working on the organization and the agenda for our meeting workshop in person in Kansas City in September 12th through 15th. A note will come out today about it, and that'll be an opportunity both to talk about things that have been done in the past 12 months and also the things that we will be doing in the future. So maybe Scott, you can.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on who's going to be there, and we know, Mert, that you're not going to be able to be there, but a bunch of others will. And so, to the extent, I don't know if Chris is going to be able to make it or not, for example, but if we're able to kind of report what the progress has been, to the at that workshop, and then if there's a like you said, Mert, if we pull things together by the end of August in terms of a case study, then there's opportunities, depending on who's there, to be able to present that case study. You know, because we're going to have breakout sessions, you know, by team. So people that are there that are a part of asset management or want to participate in an asset management team, you know, would be there, and we would like you were saying, be able to talk about what's happened during the year, and then also some planning activities to further refine going forward. So kind of looking forward to that. We know that not everybody's going to be able to attend. There's, you know, a conflict, for example, that Mert has, but I know that, you know, Deb's on the line, and Mike Sweeney has already signed up, and I think that maybe Noemi would plan to go, and so there are some people that are planning to be there, and I think that we'll try to take best advantage depending on who's there.
I feel like Mike can't present anything, so. Okay.
So maybe we go ahead, Mert, with
sure.
Your plans here.
Yeah, that sounds good. So let's power through this for a little bit. Now, I created something for us to review at, sort of like, you know, just review together on how the lifecycle cost workflow may look like. It's pretty straightforward. I kept it simple. Just one thing that I want to note here, though, is a couple of things. So first of all, you'll see, but there are no swim lanes here yet. I figured if we can get the tasks figured out, then we could worry about assigning them to the right branch, like or groups or whatever in respective utilities. There will be a few things. Let me share this. I'm gonna keep it like pretty zoomed out first, because I want to give you a few, like, you know, starters before we dig into this. Okay, so don't worry, you're not supposed to read it yet. So it kind of looks something like this, and we'll go over it real quick. But to a couple of things. So we did, you know, I did reuse the Visio's BPMN flow. So it's at least maybe down the line, perhaps Dr. Mike can, you know, a little bit quickly maybe convert this into a like actual BPMN. So that's one. The second thing is, again, like I mentioned, no swim lanes here. I'm more interested in the tasks, and then we can figure out where those go. As we step through this, you'll notice that, you know, for some of these steps, you know, we need data coming in from somewhere, and then we do something and we generate some information or data, and we need to think about, like, you know, where that is going to go and get stored, and perhaps we could add those as data objects or some sort of like a data storage system shape down the line. So that's something missing right now. There are some like decision points here, like an example, you know, whether or not, you know, like corrective maintenance is recommended on an asset or not. And if it is recommended, then yes, let's worry about tracking the cost for it. What I'm missing is, you know, individual utilities criteria for deciding whether or not corrective maintenance is recommended, or is it like throwaway sort of thing.
Mert,
So those are the little, yes, no, I mean.
Sorry, we can't see anything. Sorry.
Oh, you don't see anything? Is that
well,
the case?
we see it. It's just too small to see.
Oh yeah, I'm actually on purpose. Okay. I'm keeping it zoomed out because I want to provide this background first, and then I'm going to step through it with everybody.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll want to blow it up when you do that, so we can read it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. But I want to make sure that, you know, without you trying to focus on this, like, you know, I want to be able to get this out. So, you know, there is some, you know, little details here or there when we talk about predictive maintenance. Like, I didn't go into the detail of like, oh, okay, what kind of predictive maintenance per asset, you know, vibration versus, you know, infrared or something. That's TBD, depending on what asset we're dealing with. And there are some potential links here to the energy management team. So we may want to talk about that where we hit. And let's see what else. And lastly, all this work really and being able to track lifecycle cost leads itself to better estimating like a financial efficiency failure mode, whether or not it's realized or not. So we may need to also think about bringing that into the picture, down to like linking it to that process in the asset management plan development where we identify like service levels. So if we are failing from a financial efficiency perspective, that may trigger other things. So anyway, so there's a few things we gotta like focus on here. So I'll repeat these things again as we hit those points in the workflow, but I wanted to provide that quick link. So let's zoom in and let's start. I'm gonna zoom in. Okay, so there's some abbreviations here, but we can, just as a quick intro for what they are. I'm sure they are not necessarily shockers to everybody, but keep these in mind, and I'll repeat them as we step through this. But here we go. Okay, now, is this, maybe I can even zoom in a little more. Okay, does this look okay on your end, everyone? Like maybe somebody can let me know.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. All right, so let's start. So you may remember that we had a, where was it? Oh, develop, review, asset replacement value step in the AMP before. So we have that here. So that basically just gets translated here, but I added a little comment here for us to note that like inputs to this should include costs associated with acquisition, installation, and disposal, because some of those are credits ultimately to a replacement value. Plus, depending on what we are replacing, there may be additional costs to consider. So we need to make a decision around, like if this is what is it going to include? From my perspective, like I always am a fan of reflecting like a fully loaded cost, because that's really the cost impact to us, to our budgets. So we want to capture that fully. Anyway, so that's, I added a little bit of explanation to reflect that. And then we basically, step through, using the tool we developed, step through the process, one by one. So it's we first, and this is like white font, so maybe I can make this black. It's easier to see. Okay, so I don't know if it's easier to see, but at least we are seeing more of it. So, we start with like a decision and the decision around figuring out the decay curve. That's in the tool, if you remember, that's the change in condition over asset time, or over asset life. So failure, so we have a question here, failure data exists to develop decay curve. So are we actually able to develop a dedicated decay curve for a given asset? If it's yes, then yeah, let's go ahead and develop it. Let's plot like the failure and the corresponding change in condition over time. And then let's see if we can come up with a shape factor for that. If not, then let's actually assign a decay curve along with its shape factor per asset type, class, and operating environment. So in our approach document, if you noticed, you may or may not remember, but we talked about, okay, on average, this is like the pump decay profile, this is like a concrete tank decay profile, or so forth. And then it's possible to make adjustments to it depending on whether or not it's in some sort of like a, aggressive environment or not. So these are some of those considerations to assign one of those, shape factors we proposed. Again, utilities can come up with their own, but we assign a shape factor. And after that step, then that takes care of the decay curve part of things. And then next step is, okay, before we go further, then let's also develop our standard maintenance cost curves and their corresponding shape factors. So again, as a function of type, class, and operating environments. Sorry, did anybody have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you go back to the other, the one that you were showing, the PDF, I guess?
Oh, PDF, sure. This one? I'll zoom in.
Yeah. So my question is more, so I see, create outline. So my question is, when you first put this in the system, right, like that asset, it's kind of the, you do the asset registry, right? That's when you assign the replacement value to this, or are you doing this because you are going to replace it, or how? Sorry, it's kind of a basic question, I know, but
yeah. So maybe I can help you clarify here. So this is for the workflow here is specifically to develop the asset management plan. And you're right, in an ideal setting, once the asset gets into the system, like the replacement value is assigned to it at that stage.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So it basically, if it exists there, we basically just copy it and then we adjust it to today's dollars because it may have been entered like, I don't know, 5 years prior or something. And then we use it in the asset management plan like going forward.
Right.
Oftentimes, though, I mean, you're right in that the development of the asset management plan is the impetus to actually generate the replacement value in the first place because it doesn't exist.
Correct.
So in that
yes,
case, we need to go ahead and develop it. So that's why it's like develop / like review. It can go either way, I think.
I see. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So yeah, it's kind of like it would have been so good, like because I end up spending a lot of time coming up with like replacement values. And then even like weirder is that like a replacement value we came up with 5 years ago. We may have it, but like it was like under a different market condition. So, where maybe like the contractors may have been hungrier, which is not the case now. So it kind of like changed the whole calculus again. So that's, generally it's always good to like, I think, look at them anyway, but that's, I hope that helped. No, thank you for your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, okay, where was oh yeah, so next item was to basically come up with those maintenance cost curves. So you may remember, not here. Anyway, so we did have some like sample curves in our lifecycle tool that you may remember, like sometimes it's flat, sometimes the curve goes up pretty fast as the asset ages for maintenance costs and so forth. So we basically come up with those standard numbers. We don't necessarily use them. We'll use them if we don't have actual data. You'll see that later, but at least we come up with that. Okay, and then let's carry on. Then we need to make a decision around rehabilitation potential, whether or not rehabilitation is possible on these assets or not. Because if it is, instead of replacing it at the end of useful life, maybe we can add some sort of like a rehabilitation trigger and a cost to extend asset life. So that will obviously have a different impact on life cycle cost. So we want to have that discussion here. So if it's feasible, then we assign a rehabilitation cost to it. Now here, for example, this doesn't go into the detail of like what makes it feasible, like from one utility's perspective to another. Again, so I think there's a simple math there, whether or not are you able to achieve a specific condition improvement, like is it going to be like new or almost like new for like 30% of the replacement cost, for example. In that case, that's an investment I'm willing to make. I think we all can account for that for ourselves, but like that is not spelled out here.
So
but,
Mert, I have another question. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
So is there somewhere in here or in the other documents that considers the criticality of this particular asset, or you included in the previous kind of step? I mean, because it seems like, well, what will make this more important than the others, right? You have to consider that part, right?
There is like the asset management plan development has that step. Now, one of my points that I was going to bring up, you're a little ahead, was when we scroll a little bit to the right, and don't pay attention to what I'm skipping for now. But here when we ask the question on predictive maintenance recommended or not, so not everything will be worth us spending money and time and our resources on predictive maintenance, right? So I was kind of thinking that this is an opportunity to link from the the criteria for this little diamond is oops, wait, I just realized I'm missing something. Anyway, I'll edit later, but will be the criticality or the risk exposure, for example, including like assets cost, like a replacement value, In our approach document, I think we said we threw away things like, oh, anything over 500,000 can automatically be, you know, what is it like, be qualified for predictive maintenance if that technology exists. But I think, yeah, so that would be part of it.
But don't you think you have to, instead of spending time or at looking at it at all, you know, do you think it's better to put that analysis before, right? What do you think?
So I made it part of, like, in my mind, I made it part of like this discussion here, this decision diamond, but maybe there's an opportunity to do that. Let's review this real quick as well. So the criticality element comes into place here. Let's see, so review criticality and risk rating, or conduct risk assessment if it doesn't exist, to come up with those scores, and that helps us figure out the right management strategies. So, no, I mean, that may be a really good point. So maybe there's an opportunity to, you know, use that as an input. And I say that because there may be like instead of like making them individual, like PM recommended or not, like it may be like a manufacturer recommendation or we make our own decisions. But to me, criticality of the asset or the risk rating, if you will play a role to make that decision there. So maybe we could add that as a, maybe Dr. Mike can help with that, but there could be some sort of like a input into that discussion. From the risk data. So maybe we could add that. Now, I think, you know, we probably cannot say, you know, like maintenance not recommended, period. I think we may need to be granular, like PM versus CM versus PDM recommended or not. So maybe we can add like risk as an input into like a, I don't know how to show it, but Dr. Mike can maybe help with that, but like to recommend that, you know, it sort of like comes in as some sort of criteria to, like a hurdle to pass. Let's add a note to capture that. So let's say how to capture this effectively for these types of decisions. Can we show the asset risk as a criterion input? Something like that, maybe. So that's a potential edit we can actually implement here. So thanks, Noemi. Good point. So, but yeah, maybe we consider the risk. We consider the asset's replacement value, for example, as part of this decision-making diamond. And if it is recommended, and maybe OEM says you have to do it regardless to qualify for warranty, I don't know, like things like that, we say yes, you know, then we track it. Then we ask the question whether or not we are actually tracking the asset, you know, the annual average, you know, preventive maintenance cost in our systems or not. And here I'm thinking maybe we can link like a CMMS or something as an input into this, as like a data storage goes there. And if it is tracked, we can actually go ahead and calculate what that is over the last so many years. And again, it's up to us. You know, I would look at the last 3 years and then come out with an average that way. You may do last 5. But if it is not tracked and we are going to want to track it, then we actually do an estimate. By the way, I was thinking English, such a funny word, such a funny language. It kind of sometimes drives me crazy because, you know, you ask for an estimate, but you estimate things. And it's written the same way, just like, right? All right. After that little distraction.
Yeah, why?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So after that little distraction, let's carry on. But, you know, so if we don't have the, you know, resources to be able to like at least calculate it ourselves, then we come up with what we think what a reasonable estimate is. And this is I made this like a little like a, you know, it's sort of like this has its sub process here technically, because You may actually do some ad hoc stuff here. You can get some invoices perhaps from third parties. You could interview the people who are actually maintaining this asset, and you could kind of create a representative number to use. Or you say, oh, it's a mechanical asset. It's an asset type is pump. And then we say, oh, okay, we believe this is going to be like 1% of its replacement value per year, and it's going to follow this profile, decay profile. It's going to follow this maintenance cost increase profile over time. So it could be like, like it's up to us, I think, to figure out the level of detail rigor there, but that's the step there. Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you kind of have it covered, but I know that the focus here is on what is the data and information that you need to collect to be able to come up with these different models, decay curves, and project what your future requirements are. The whole element of which you spent a lot of time earlier in other meetings on what are the data elements that you collect, what are the costs, how do you basically it's just the planning and scheduling of the work to do those maintenance activities. Those are all kind of inputs. And I think in one of your earlier, scrolling to the left, I think it was, you had, in red, I think you had, some of those things.
Oh, you mean this? Yeah, that's right. And you're
right there. Yeah, there, it's implied, but I think it's very obviously very important. And you just mentioned the maintenance activities and everything. And so there's a whole, subsets of process related to that, which we aren't defining here, but it's just really critical, I think. If you don't have the data, you can't very well analyze it and come up with the models, right? And so just the ongoing O&M activities, I think, are just came across as a little understated, but I guess maybe it's implied or listed there, as inputs for the data sources.
Is, and I think, yeah, I think you're right in that they are kind of here. But if there's anything that is specific, like for example, this is listed as life cycle costs, which is like super generic and high level here.
Right.
So what we're trying to do a little bit is basically break that down a little bit. So if there are opportunities, by the way, I'm going to go back to Visio just for a second, but just, in general, remember. So we had these steps here on, like establishing the replacement values. And then like Noemi said, ideally, you establish those and then you feed them back, if you have updated values to where you're storing them and all that good stuff. But when it comes to this whole like life cycle cost development, I mean, when I think about it, that's really, to me, that really is here. So, maintenance activities, may it be corrective or predictive or whatever, these operations techniques and their corresponding costs, they are all asset management strategies, really. So, right. All this stuff we are talking about, to me, is almost like populating like this box. And if you remember, we had like a chat with last week with Dr. Mike around how perhaps these two boxes can be combined. I mean, that's really what we are doing when we are talking about life cycle cost components. So, we are asking whether or not, rehabilitation is feasible. That's a management strategy. Whether or not preventive maintenance is feasible or recommended, that's a management strategy. And then we go through the steps to develop the costs associated with those. So I think that most of the stuff we are discussing is buried here. And Scott, I applaud you bringing it up. So that kind of goes to my what's that word? Prelude, like my little soliloquy at the beginning when I was really zoomed out around, like if there are opportunities to figure out like which data is coming from where, and then we develop some information that's going to get stored somewhere else, we may want to build upon this by like creating those links.
Right. Right. Just worth noting, and Noemi is the expert on what she's going to be doing, but I think adding assets to the registry and having the data elements identified, CMMS elements, etc., maintenance strategies associated with it when you add assets, and then when you retire assets, how you do that are two elements that I heard that you were going to be doing, Noemi. And so those are actually amplifications, you might say, of sub processes that in this whole value chain that you know, are going to add to the robustness of the model as well.
Yes.
Does that make sense, Noemi? Is that
I
what you're planning to do?
the thing is that, you know, we do some of it, but it's not. I mean, I can, if you are asking me to develop it, I can. I don't think in PUC, in San Francisco PUC, we do it. You know, we do some of it, but not, you know, we're not super great at doing this.
It's a journey anyway, right? I mean, it's gonna take a while to get to that destination.
Yeah, no.
But so let's go back to those, like, you know, if we can quickly power through this so that I can tell you what this looks like. And maybe, Scott, the next meeting opportunity is to identify those connection points.
Yeah.
Maybe like a risk criteria coming in, like Noemi was saying, and then what specific, you know, CMMS data we are going to be considering where, you know, linking those that may make this more robust. But in a nutshell, the idea is that, you know, we click on the, you know, like this little thing here, that it expands like what we are actually trying to put forward for the most part, not all of it, but like many of those boxes are buried under this little plus and this little plus. Okay. And at this stage, this setup here that you see for preventive maintenance repeats itself for other maintenance management strategy activities, such as corrective maintenance, recommended or not. Again, this could be like a run to failure asset, so corrective maintenance is not recommended. Or corrective maintenance is recommended for certain failure modes and not other failure modes. So like if it's easy enough to address, we do it. If it's certain failure modes triggered, you know, then yeah, no, we'll now it's run to failure. So this doesn't go into that decision here. I mean, we can probably build it later, but it's also a little, I think maybe, you know, maybe potentially utility specific a little bit. It depends on in-house, you know, resource availability and so forth. But it repeats it. So, you know, if CM is recommended, great, then, you know, do we have data on annual, you know, do we have data to be able to calculate annual average corrective maintenance costs we've incurred against this asset over the last so many years? If yes, we'll use it and we'll assign a cost curve and a shape factor and the cost number. If not, we'll do an estimate. We'll do an estimate around asset type, and you know, that will dictate the shape factor and the percent, you know, as an initial percent of its replacement value. If it's not recommended, then we just go to the same question on predictive maintenance. Again, that is important for, you know, risk. Again, becomes a trigger here, whether or not it's going to be worthwhile to invest in PDM efforts or not. If yes, then we do this. If it's not recommended, we just need to, this just needs to actually, this is what was missing, and I'm going to correct this now because it will drive me crazy later. Okay, here we go. So yeah, so we assign the predictive maintenance cost, its curve shape factor, and then the process ends. Now, what we didn't cover is operations, so I'll go back real quick. So we have this parallel gateway there, so things happen in parallel, the BPMN language there. So these were the maintenance cost elements, and if you recall, there was operations cost elements as well. So we start considering those. We started, you know, I started here with just like the first one of importance, which is like whether or not, you know, we are measuring power usage annually, you know, whether or not we can get to some sort of an annual, you know, power usage number. If yes, you know, we look at the data and then we assign the annual average. If no, I have to ask a question to ourselves whether or not the power usage is significant or not. Again, no criteria set here whether or not this is significant, but there may be a connection to the energy management team. So they may have some recommendations coming up whether or not, you know, it makes sense to manage the energy or power usage for certain assets versus others. So let me add a comment here to, you know, so we don't forget that. I don't think I'll forget, but let's add.
Yeah, and it it obviously, Mert, is a significant cost element as well, you know, for some of these assets, right? So it could, you know, what the energy cost is and what the potential savings are could impact even the corrective maintenance plan.
Yes, it would. You're right, Scott. Potential into energy management team in terms of assigning criteria for tracking power consumption. So yeah, so some of those criteria I would expect to be exactly that, you know, whether or not, you know, it is, if you don't fix it, if you don't address those failure modes, or if we actually just throw it away and get a new one, is the cost savings, does the cost savings justify that? I'm guessing they would have some sort of like a return period recommendation. They would have some sort of rule of thumbs they may want to consider in terms of like run hours combined with like the total key kWh over the course of a year. So that may be a link there that we could, you know, like an off-page input to the Visio, to the BPMN from that team. But if it's significant, then we could find a way to do an estimate. If it's not significant,
you may not be tracking it by asset if it's not significant.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. Then we could basically ignore this impact of this. And then the question then becomes, again, another cost here, whether or not annual estimated operations, otherwise, like other, we probably should say is other. So outside of energy, other annual estimated operations costs are significant. Again, I don't know what this number is. It's so difficult to assign a dedicated operations cost to any one asset, because when it comes to maintenance, yes, we do track that against work orders, against assets. What we don't do really is, you know, take the time of the operators who sit in front of a screen and operate the whole plant, or, you know, go and do like a, you know, route check on whether or not everything is operating, you know, as expected or not. You know, that doesn't get tracked at the asset level. So this may be a, you know, like a utopic dream to actually go to this level of detail. Most of the time it's going to be a no, and then it's going to end the process. But if it's a yes, then yeah, we do spend some time to identify the operations cost.
Mert, just FYI, the energy team has also kind of developed a sub process called the treasure hunt, which is just a fancy word to looking for what kind of opportunities for energy savings are there. And basically an engagement process with operations and operators and such to identify what are kind of projects that would, you know, either be for improvements in O&M ongoing that don't have to even be authorized. They just go ahead and do those things without special financial resources, all the way to creating projects to basically upgrade the energy systems, let's say, associated with certain pumps or you know, treatment processes, etc. So it's just a lot of tie-ins that are possible here.
Savings opportunities and potential projects to implement.
Right.
So that does sound like, you know, I would expect a treasure hunt to have some sort of criteria assigned to it, Scott.
That's right.
I don't know what they are, but yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, they have criteria, and they even sometimes do little mini business cases, and they, you know, and it can lead to programming for CIP or corrective maintenance.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Hey, Mert, I have a comment on your the top part of when that additional arrow that you put to the end, right? Because to me, this, you know, decision making, when you said no there, I guess, is that a no? I guess no, right? There is a no there.
So yeah, so I actually added the arrow, but I didn't write the no. But yeah, that was supposed to be the no, like decision. Yeah, if the PDM is not recommended,
so that is kind of run to failure, right? Because you are asking a lot of questions. I said, no, 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 no. Then yeah, let's run it to failure, right? Is that that one?
Yeah, I guess what is missing here. So if the predictive maintenance is a no, it may still be not necessarily run to failure. We may still be doing PM on them. So if we are, yeah.
No, because let me see. And because you let's see, asset my annual average PM cost track. No, CM recommended. I guess in this case, CM recommended. I think it's goes to no, right?
So yeah, if PM recommended is a no, then it asks, I mean, at least the way I set this up is that then we ask the question, okay, we don't have any PMs, but will there be any CMs? But one of the outputs of if PMs are recommended or not would be if PM recommended is no, then it's a run to failure asset.
Oh.
So that becomes almost like a, I don't know, like I don't know if we could call it an attribute or some sort of like its own dedicated management strategy. So in that case, it's run to failure. Or maybe that's something we can add. So the output is if we follow this arrow, then the current management strategy is run to failure. But if the CM is recommended, then we just fix it when it breaks.
But if it's not, then run to failure again, right?
If it's not, then it's run to failure again. Exactly. And and I like to think that if PDM is yes, like if the PDM criteria are met and we are going to do PDM on an asset, chances are, it is not run to failure anyway.
No, exactly.
So yeah.
But then no will be run to failure for sure. Okay. Well, anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That makes sense. And I like that actually. I mean, so there may be an opportunity to specify the status is run to failure, or no, we'll fix it when it breaks with PM or without PM or something to that effect. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, if you have an asset that's not designated as a run to fail, and I may have missed this along the way, Mert, but do you have any thought toward the possibility that you could be wrong? In other words, the degradation curve is incorrect, the assets in worse shape than you thought based upon your data, or a contractor hits it, causes a major problem. Any of those instances, there may need to be the development of a contingency plan if it's at imminent failure or failed. Do you have any consideration thought of or built into this?
Let's see. So I wonder if that would be captured in the larger. So this would be just the aims for just to calculate the lifecycle cost. So I wonder if that is captured as part of failure mode somewhere called out here. So the one thing that I noticed in this early asset management plan development workflow, the failure modes is not called out separately. My expectation is that it's buried in here under required service levels. So, things like that, for example, a contractor sort of driven failure, like that would be a failure mode, and that would be a recommendation associated with that. When it comes to if I made an assumption, if I'm ever wrong, of course not, I'm never wrong. Joking.
I was talking about the 5% probability.
Yeah,
which means you're never wrong statistically.
So does that fit in criticality? I'm going to interrupt for a second and say what is what Mike's asking part of criticality analysis.
So yeah, so the imminent versus the dominant failure mode. I believe there is a so once we have our failure modes, I think one of them is imminent, and then that could be a dominant one. But I think each of them will have like a risk profile really that you need to manage. So what we do in our asset management plans is that we identify those, like an asset failing through physical mortality over time, asset failing because of capacity over time, or these sorts of other reasons that sort of trigger a, it's failing by physical mortality, but not like in 30 years on its own. It's actually failing because somebody actually hit it. So there's a risk matrix for that. Cello came online to tell us we are running out of time.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say that, I sent out a note to folks on a different subject and received 19 I'm out of office responses. So I think my guess that a lot of people, we usually have a bit stronger attendance here, but a lot of people are out this week. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that we are looking forward to our first opportunity after so much time to have dedicated in-person workshop in September. And Scott has been the prime organizing force. So maybe Scott, you can say a couple of things and about the workshop and
yeah, sorry for interrupting here, Mert. We just had a commercial message and then but basically we're encouraging everybody to register for the workshop and to make hotel reservations. I mean, if somebody happened to get COVID at the last minute, it's all cancelable. So there's no real incentive to wait, and there's more incentive to actually register if you're intending to go, you're planning to go, you're hoping to go, so that we can get more specific on the planned agenda. But it's a real, we've tried to minimize the cost by, WEF is paying for dinners. The utilities, Kansas City, the host utility, is paying for lunches and coffee breaks, and we have transportation shuttling services available to restaurants. We even have our famous jazz night that is going to happen during that time. But we're hoping that people call to make reservations at the hotel. You have to call rather than use a link, and Cello just sent out instructions for that, and then register through the WEF link that's provided in the email that you should have just received. So maybe I'll just stop there, Mert, because I took some of your time.
Thank you. I was looking for my mouse to mute. Thank you, Scott. So let's, we didn't finish this obviously, and I wasn't expecting we would. I took some notes around, what to do, some sort of contingency around what to do if we are wrong. Like, is there like an iterative cycle there based on Mike's comment? I took notes of Noemi's comment around like linking the risk criteria and what Scott said around bringing in like the data sources in. So I'll email this out to everybody so you can look at it a little bit more between now and the next meeting. Our goal then I think will be, at the next opportunity, let's see if we can close some of those gaps we identified and package it in a, let's say, a final draft format. And Chris will be available, I hope, next meeting, so he can be in the loop as well. And I will, I'm happy to, Scott and Cello, I'm happy to sort of give a primer to him at the next opportunity.
That's
before
great.
the meeting.
Thank you, Mert.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you so much for your comments. These are good, helpful. I'll add these to the mix.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.